Just a couple of playoff teams in a Week 18 tune-up. Locked on 49ers, Locked on Rams, previewing the regular season finale. Coming at you right now.
You are Locked on Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another Locked On Podcast Network crossover episode. Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers, along with Travis Rogers of Locked On Rams, getting ready for this Week 18 matchup. A couple of NFC teams doing pretty well and locked into playoff spots. And so some interesting matchups that might not be quite as the schedule makers intended for this Week 18 season finale. I want to thank everybody out there for making us your first listen on Locked On 49ers and Locked On Rams. We appreciate all the everydayers out there. Subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And of course, every Locked On Thursday episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. The biggest storylines, key matchups. We'll talk about how this game might look here in this Week 18 and maybe a different look than we expected from these two football teams, Travis. And, just as we all expected, right? Sam Darnold against Carson Wentz.
Wow. Battle of the Redheads.
Yeah. How did we end up here? NFC West, though, kind of handling business after all, right?
Well, it's not where I thought we were going to end up. That's for sure. This was a team that, from the Rams perspective, that I thought had a chance, maybe not a good chance, but a chance to maybe get the number one overall pick. That they're looking at maybe winning 10 games, I felt was completely, crazy. I thought that this was probably a 4, 5, 6 win team, landed somewhere in there. If everything broke exactly right, maybe they get to 7 or 8. Well, everything broke exactly right, exactly the way that they needed to. And not only are they in, but they're in with a week to spare. Like you mentioned, the NFC West, the Cardinals did, I think, both your team and the Rams a huge solid by beating the Eagles, putting you guys into that number 1 seed, not having to worry about it, putting the Rams into the playoffs. Seattle took care, did their thing by losing to the Steelers. So everybody did exactly what they needed to do in the division to get us to where we are.
Well, it's funny because the Seahawks didn't even handle their business enough to make it so this game mattered for the Rams, because I thought once they beat the Eagles that they were like, oh, now the 49ers are going to rest everybody, so the Rams are going to beat the 49ers, and it's going to mean everything to the Rams and not to the 49ers. And it turns out they couldn't even handle that part of it. And so really the Seahawks and the Rams going in a couple of different directions here, and the Seahawks still have some work to do to try to get that 7 seed. And I guess there is still a 6-7 seed that is up for grabs, right, for the Los Angeles Rams, but apparently for Sean McVay, it doesn't matter all that much.
He doesn't seem to care if they're the 6 or the 7. I think, when they decided to play Carson Wentz instead of Matthew Stafford, I'd be really surprised if we see a lot of any of the starters over the course of the game. They could still fall to the 7. If they win, they're 6. If they lose and Green Bay loses and Seattle wins, then the Rams are still the 6. If the Rams lose and the Packers win, then the Rams fall to the 7.
Got it. Okay. So it's the Packers there.
Yeah.
What a weird season this year, man.
Bizarre.
The Rams are terrible. Oh, no, they're really good. The Packers are terrible. No, they're good. Oh, actually, I don't know how good they are. And even it's funny because my Cowboy hating listeners are like, oh, the Rams actually don't want the 6 seed. They want the 7 seed so they can play the Cowboys instead of the Lions.
Well, I can tell you this. I know that every Rams fan in Los Angeles and elsewhere wants to play the Lions. And not just because that the Lions might be a slightly more manageable opponent, but the storylines are just too juicy. That Matthew Stafford returning to Detroit for the first time since they made that trade a couple of years ago. They haven't been through there since then. Of course, the whole Jared Goff and Sean McVay situation that, it was a breakup. And like they say, if things didn't end badly, they wouldn't end at all. He's in Detroit and Sean McVay got exactly what he needed in Matthew Stafford. He's kind of rolling into town with his new wife or girlfriend, however you want to look at it. Like, all right, we're gonna put you out again. And I'm sure that Jared Goff would love to take Sean McVay out. It's a far juicier matchup for the Rams if they end up in Detroit than if they end up in Philadelphia or Dallas.
For some reason, I never even thought about that angle with the Stafford and Goff thing. And that has to happen. Please, God, allow that to happen.
Yeah, no, if the NFL script writers are worth their salt, they've already got this one figured out, and the Rams will end up back in Detroit.
So Kyle Shanahan has said that Christian McCaffrey, he's got a minor calf injury. He's going to sit, so he's going to have a couple weeks to get ready. He talked about on, I don't even know what day it is that we're talking here. We're recording this on Wednesday. He did speak on Wednesday and said that Brock Purdy is not going to play. So those are the only two we know for sure that aren't going to play is Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy is going to still have a uniform on because he needs to be the number 3 emergency quarterback, but he's not going to play. And even if he does get in the game, it was like, yeah, well, at least we have a quarterback that can hand the ball off. So I guess it would look a lot like the NFC Championship game in that game. Sam Darnold against Carson Wentz. Neither guy has really played in a real game for a calendar year since the end of last season. So that'll be interesting. And those guys are trying to help their own cause in free agency and get future jobs. So that'll be interesting. And really I think maybe just it's the football weirdo in me. I want to see what Sam Darnold looks like. We haven't really got to see a full, real, live game Sam Darnold aside from the preseason. And, what kind of dust has Kyle Shanahan sprinkled over the top of his head? And Carson Wentz hasn't even been around that long in LA, but you have to like being coached by one of these two coaches.
Oh, no doubt about it. It's funny you say that because I was talking to my radio show today, and I thought coming out of SC, Sam Darnold was going to be really good. I thought he was, there's no such thing as a sure thing, but I thought he was going to be a really good player. He's big enough. He's athletic enough. He's smart enough. He's got a strong enough arm. And I'm thinking, okay, those are the pieces that you need. Now he went to, football black hole in with the Jets, where he was surrounded by bad coaches and bad players, and he got off to a terrible start. And then we know what happened in Carolina. And I'm like you, Brian, when he went to San Francisco, I'm like, Kyle Shanahan, if anybody can fix him, it's Kyle Shanahan, maybe Sean McVay. So let's see what that looks like. I'm excited to see him too. And I think everything we just said about Darnold, you could say about Wentz over the last few years. Wentz was an MVP candidate the last time the Rams ran into him in the Coliseum. They were on their way to the Super Bowl, and he got hurt against the Rams in the Coliseum. He was going in, and he got his knee hurt. That's when Nick Foles comes in. We know how that story ends. And then shortly after, Carson Wentz is down the road, and that was kind of the end of his career as a high-level player. I hope we never have to see him play in a playoff game, but I would like to know that if he does come in, he's had a little bit of experience. Going back to what you said a second ago, the Rams had a game in Lambeau Field earlier this season against the Packers. It was the worst NFL game I've ever seen in my life because the Packers looked dreadful. The Rams looked worse. That was the Brett Rippon game where Matthew Stafford didn't play at all. And the next thing you know, the Rams have Carson Wentz on their team a week later. That Rippon's gone, and here comes Wentz because they realized that that's not good enough, that Stafford's obviously the engine that makes this thing go. But if you have to get through a few plays, a quarter, a half, a game, Wentz might be the answer there. So I'm excited to see what both these guys bring on Sunday.
There is a little bit of Matthew Stafford light to Carson Wentz's game too. Big arm. He'll kind of sling it. He'll make some throws that you're like, oh wow, or maybe a few that maybe you might want to even have that one back. Right. But he does that to an even further, more extreme degree. So yeah, fascinating, really, for me. And I know a lot of people would be like, "What, Carson Wentz against Sam Darnold?" I'm going to turn the channel. But I think for the hardcore listeners, the types of folks that are everydayers listening to Locked On 49ers, Locked On Rams, I think they're going to be watching this game with some interest with those quarterbacks.
Yeah, I do too. And it's nice to have a little bit of wiggle room. And, the Rams, and we can get into this, the Rams have some things they got to figure out too, in particular in their special teams. And I think they're going to use this game as a little bit of a laboratory to figure out exactly what it is they have. And the answer may be nothing at all. And so that's at least clarifying, if nothing else. But it doesn't mean anything for the Niners. It doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot for the Rams, but there's a lot of things to at least try to figure out what you have going into the playoffs.
All right, more on that. A few more notes on who might be playing, who might not be playing in this game. Week 18, 49ers, Rams crossover, and some key matchups next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Rams is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. It's like the new year, new you. What about the good you that already exists and improving on that and helping yourself be the best version of you? Maybe you finally organized part of your space, your office. For me, it's my home office here that I do podcasts out of, my home studio. And maybe you want to tackle another project around your house. Or maybe you are taking new supplements every morning, trying to get healthier from the within and inside out. Now you want to actually eat some breakfast or whatever it is to start your day right. It's incremental progress, right? And looking after yourself. Just that weekly check-in with the therapist can be so helpful. Make sure you are on track. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. So celebrate the progress you've already made and visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. So I would be shocked, Travis, if Trent Williams plays in this game. There's a few 49ers that have dealt with, tons of injuries throughout their careers, some veteran guys, those types of players that take Wednesdays off during the week anyway. Trent Williams is one of those. He's too valuable of a guy. The quarterback's already not playing. Good luck, Sam Darnold, but I think you're going to have a backup left tackle in there blocking for you as well. So if I had to guess, and Kyle Shanahan hasn't said anything beyond McCaffrey and Brock Purdy, but I'd be shocked if Trent Williams is out there. But at a certain point, these aren't 90-man preseason rosters. You got to have some guys suited up. So what kind of clues do you have on who might play and who might not for the Rams in this one?
Well, officially as Stafford, right? And that was, I think, a no-brainer. I think the really interesting one for me is Puka Nacua, because he's really close to setting an NFL record. He needs 4 catches and 29 yards to set both the receptions record for a rookie and the yardage record for a rookie. So because it's so close, I think that you'll see him. I think they'll probably try to get him the ball early and often and say, I would be really surprised if there's anything over the middle. I think you're going to see some wide receiver screens and some bubbles and things like this to get him that record. And I think he probably disappears pretty quickly because, as weird as it sounds, the 5th round rookie is right near the top of the list as far as their most important offensive players. Cooper Kupp has been dealing, much like Trent Williams, you mentioned, with little nagging things all season long. He's finally starting to look like himself a little bit. You'd hate to see a setback in a game that doesn't mean all that much. So I think he's another player that is likely to maybe not play at all or very, very little. The one, too, that I think could go either way is Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald plays a lot. He's incredibly durable. He's Aaron Donald. But you need Aaron Donald, whether it's Dallas, Philly, or Detroit. You're going to want number 99 at his best. But if he wants to play, I think he probably will. It's just a matter of whether or not they can talk him into taking a little bit of a breather. Those are the guys that I think you're going to see maybe a little bit or none of. And then, of course, Kyren Williams is another one that they found, in the 5th round last year. Didn't get to play him much. He got, I don't think a lot of people realize this. He got hurt on the very first play of the season last year, on the opening kickoff of opening night against Buffalo to, the Super Bowl banner, the whole thing. He got hurt covering a kick. Didn't play again until like week 10 or 11, and then didn't play much after that. It's kind of whatever. Sean McVay kept saying he's a good player. He's a good player. He's a good player. Well, he is a good player. And then he missed 4 games this year. He was on the IL. He comes back and he's been a revelation. So I think he's another one you kind of put in bubble wrap. With, they get a little Ronnie Rivers, you'll get a little Royce Freeman at that running back position. So I think a lot of those offensive players, I should say, might get a really light work or no work. I'd expect most of the defensive guys, maybe with the exception of Donald, to probably play a decent amount.
Yeah, Aaron Donald's one of those guys too that's just wired in a way. And Christian McCaffrey was like this from the first day of OTAs, practicing like it's the Super Bowl. And those are the types of guys that you have to hide their helmet, or else they're going to be like, you want to eat something. They want to get after it. So it's almost like just wear a tracksuit so you don't accidentally wander onto the football field.
I think you're right, and you couldn't be more right about how he's wired. And I think if he wants to play, he'll play. I think if they'll give him the option. I think that's probably the way it goes. And short of leaving him back in Los Angeles, I think he's going to probably want to play.
Love Puka. Love the way he plays. Everything he does translates. Sometimes it doesn't work out with your draft stock. He was a really good player in college. You watch the tape, you love the tape. You're like, he's not super big, fast, whatever it is. But he's a dog out there. And so I love that. And it would be really cool to see him get those numbers. And, there's probably some other players that we don't know about or do know about that maybe need some incentives. And there's some extra reasons for coaches to get them on the field and get them some certain numbers. But I do hope Puka Nacua gets those, because he's had a phenomenal season, and he's absolutely the real deal. I wasn't sure because I drafted Cooper Kupp in my fantasy league, and picked up the Puka Nacua after the first week, and thank God I did, because he's been phenomenal, and I was starting both guys.
Like you said, he's a dog, and he is clearly the emotional center of that offense. Stafford's the most important player, but Puka is the guy that kind of gives those guys a spark. It'd be interesting to see if it happens on Sunday, but it's happened far more often than it hasn't, where there's kind of a Puka drive in every game where all of a sudden he starts getting the ball over and over again, and the Rams get a little life, and he'll make a big play. You saw the one against the Giants last week with 80 yards, and they ran him down right before the goal line. He's over there puking in the trash can shortly after. But it gave them life. It gave them a spark, and there seems to be a drive in most of the games that the Rams win where Puka just kind of takes over. He's been invaluable. Other than Stafford, he's the one guy I don't think you can function without right now.
Real quick with the defensive side of the ball, and this is, big picture, not knowing exactly who's going to play, who's not going to play. I've heard the Rams defense be referred to as the no-name defense, but it's the one-name defense, right? But what other names out there for some 49ers fans that might be looking for in this game, or, in the playoffs when they're watching the Rams? Some of those names might not be household, but some of those names ring out a lot louder, I'm sure, than they did before the 49ers and Rams played the first time.
I'll give you two. Number one is a guy that's been here for a little bit in his third year, but this is the first time that he's gotten the majority of the snaps. That's Ernest Jones, their middle linebacker. He has been kind of everywhere, and he doesn't have a ton of counting stats along the way, so he's not one of those guys that, if you're just flipping through and looking at things casually, that you're going to pick up on. But he's involved in a lot of things. He's done a great job this year. And then another one of their rookies, they got Kobe Turner in the third round out of Wake Forest, and he's got 9.5 sacks at this point in this season. He's a guy that was considered probably more of a project than anything else coming in, alongside with Byron Young, another third round guy that they picked. And both of those guys have hit in a meaningful way. I think those are the two guys that I'd look at. 99's 99. You got some more veteran guys, Kel Witherspoon, who I know you guys are familiar with in San Francisco. He's been good, not great, but good enough, and probably the best corner that this team has at this point. They brought John Johnson back, a guy that they drafted a few years ago, left to go get some money in Cleveland. Didn't really work out all that well there. He's back and playing at a pretty good level. The Rams don't have a bunch of guys. Jalen Ramsey's gone. Bobby Wagner's gone. Ashawn Robinson is gone. Von Miller and Michael Brockers and Sue and all these guys, these big name guys that you got accustomed to, they're long gone. It's Darnold and guys that just play really hard and do just enough.
More key matchups, more paths to victory here for 49ers Rams week 18. Crossover style, Locked On 49ers, Locked On Rams. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question: what's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And I don't know if Sean McVay and in the front office for the Rams put a bat signal out on LinkedIn Jobs in the off season, but they needed a lot of help with their rather larger business, but a small workforce there. And they found a lot of help there. And that's what you need. Just a little bit more for your small business. Get people that are wired correctly. And LinkedIn just isn't another job board. We're talking about a vast network of 1 billion professionals. Makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours on LinkedIn Jobs. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. One more note, personnel wise with the Rams that I find fascinating And in some ways, there's some parallels with the 2023 Rams and the 2022 Seahawks. And it's how much production they're getting from their rookie class. We talked about Puka. I mean, he's been the rookie of the year, non-quarterback edition, non-CJ Stroud edition. Phenomenal what he's doing and the numbers he's putting up as a wide receiver. You mentioned Kobe Turner on defense. Byron Young's got 7 sacks coming off the edge, which is tied with the guy who was the number 3 pick in the draft, and Will Anderson. Speaking of Texans rookies, a couple of good rookie classes there. When you can get that many players, who's the guard, the second round guard? Yeah. I mean, you got 4 starters in your rookie class. It's phenomenal.
Five. They found a punter too that in Ethan Evans that they drafted. And I know you're not, there's no back, but he's an NFL punter. It's not like they're going to start to cycle through him. They got a guy cheap. He's going to be here for a while. They found 5. And then you throw, I kind of give him like 5.5 because Kyren didn't really play last year. I know he's not a part of this draft class, but this is the first time he's really gotten a chance to contribute. And he's another one. He's second in the league in rushing yards behind McCaffrey. He's done an unbelievable job. They found 6 players in their last 2 draft classes that not only have hit, but have hit somewhere between huge, like all pro level, like Puka, and really, really solid, like guys like Avila, Young, and Turner.
Yeah, I mean, we're speaking of fantasy leagues. There's probably some people out there listening that had Puka and Kyren Williams, and were drafted number 1 overall and took Christian McCaffrey, and we're laughing all the way to the bank in their fantasy leagues, right?
You're
I mean,
right.
League winners we're talking about on these 2 teams. How much those league winners will play, we'll see on Sunday. But what do you expect this to look like? What's the path to victory here for the Los Angeles Rams? What are you looking out for on Sunday?
So for me, it's at the end of the day, I think you need an answer to 2 questions. Number 1, are you still healthy? And do everything you can to stay as healthy as you can. It's football and stuff happens. I get that, but do your very best to avoid, a catastrophe. And number 2 is, what does your kicking game look like? For people that might not know, the 49er fans that might not follow this as closely as the Rams fans, the Rams started the season with Brett Maher. He was dreadful. They fired him about halfway through the season. They brought in a guy by the name of Lucas Haversick to replace him, who, believe it or not, was worse. They're now back to Maher again. They brought him back last week. They fired Haversick after the Giants game. He missed 2 more PATs. The Rams have missed, you ready for this? 15 kicks this season. Between extra points and field goals, they've missed 15 kicks. The next most in the league is 10. So they are, they're 50% more than the next worst team. It's a huge problem. And I think that one of the things that you have to figure out on Sunday is, do you even bother to kick anymore? Sincerely, like, do you just go for it every time? Do you go for 2? Do you go for, the nightmare scenario is it's 4th and 7 from the 25-yard line and you're down 3 points and there's a minute left to go in the game. Do you kick it? I guess you have to in that situation. They haven't made a kick that's mattered in a very long time. There's no confidence in their kicking game. So I'd like to get, if he makes a few, then maybe you kind of roll it and go from there. But if it looks like I feel it might look, then I think you go into that wild card round knowing you got 4 downs to get 10 yards just about every time.
Well, look, 49ers fans cannot relate there. They had Robbie Gould, who was just a stalwart, never in his career missed a playoff field goal attempt. And then he was in a free agent. They didn't want to spend the money there. So they drafted the top kicker in the draft, and he turned out to look like the top kicker in the draft. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Many times it doesn't happen. But Jake Moody's been really good for the 49ers as a rookie. Missed a couple kicks, but he's been absolutely fine. And 49ers fans are probably feeling pretty good about that. And they actually drafted the first punter in the draft about 4 years ago, Mitch Wishnowsky. He's doing a good job as a punter. So special teams kicking units doing a good job for the 49ers. Some return issues, and Ray McLeod's been injured. But it's funny because you brought up Brett Maher, and he was a problem last year for the Cowboys. Yep. And I'm thinking, how would a team that expects to win big games bring him in to be their kicker? So I don't think the Rams expected to be in a situation to need kicks to win big games.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Brian. I've been saying this because the Rams had a good kicker for the last couple of years. Matt Gay was about as good as you could ask for. He had a big leg. He was good to about 55 yards. You could even kind of stretch him to 60 and hope, but inside of 45, he was making about everything that you would need him to make. The Colts offered him a bunch of money. The Rams opted not to match, and they let him go. And I think you're exactly right. I've been saying this. I don't think the Rams thought that the difference between them maybe making another, as crazy as this sounds, maybe making another run to an NFC championship game, maybe beyond, and getting a Super Bowl might be the difference between being able to make a 40-yard kick or not. And so I think they kind of left it at the bottom of their to-do list. Well, here we are in the second week or first week of January, I should say, and it's a real problem. And there aren't anybody, there isn't anybody that they actually tried Mason Crosby out a few weeks ago, and Haversick beat him out in practice. And, we saw Mason Crosby miss a kick for the Giants at the end of the game last week against the Rams. The whole kicking world for the Rams has kind of come full circle, but I couldn't agree with you more. This was not supposed to be a problem because they weren't supposed to be as good as they are.
Ahead of schedule on the rebuild for those Los Angeles Rams, in a really solid rookie class too. So fascinating. They're going to have some more early picks finally coming up too for those Rams into the future.
First time they'll have a first-round pick since Jared Goff, since 2016.
Unbelievable there. And Niners haven't had one in a while either. I keep forgetting to open up those articles about mock drafts because I haven't been able to find a 49ers pick in years. And so that's going to be a lot more fun, I think, for these fans in the offseason. And hopefully that doesn't come for a while. For these two teams, and who knows, maybe another NFC championship game is in the books, and then there'll be a part 3 again this year. But look at this one. Yeah, you nailed it with it's all about injuries, getting right. There's not going to be a lot put on tape for teams to scout from this game for those playoff games. It's going to be fun. Darnold versus Wentz. There's I don't know if there's going to be fireworks on offense or there's going to be, over under 4.5 interceptions thrown in this game. I don't know which way it's going to go. I will say this. Here's a nugget for the listeners out there. DFS leagues, my guy Jordan Mason, he's the third string running back. I don't know if it's really that smart to put the number 2 back, Elijah Mitchell, out there on the field much because he's been as injured as anybody. I'd probably feel more comfortable with Christian McCaffrey coming out of this game healthy than Elijah Mitchell, who's been the number 2 guy. And he played really well with in place of Christian McCaffrey, who left the game last week. But really good, strong, hard runner is Jordan Mason. I think that's going to be featured quite a bit in this football game. So for those Week 18 oddball DFS leagues, right, that's your guy. 49ers running back Jordan Mason. I think there's going to be a whole lot of him. I'm going 3 bills on that one.
Okay, there you go. I got a quick question for you. So take me through how you beat the 49ers. The 49ers you'll see in the playoffs. The Purdy, the Debo, the Kittle, the Ayuks, the Trent Williams, the real 49ers. How do you beat that team? Because the Rams have not beat them other than that NFC Championship game. And every time I talk about it, it's like, shout out to Jaquiski Tartt for having that ball slip through his hands because that was everything in that game. But how do you beat that team?
The 49ers, I've said it many times on Locked On 49ers, they're the ultimate front runner, and it's not a negative. They're built in a way they want to bully you. They want to run the ball well. They want to have Kyle Shanahan's got the laminated sheet in front of his face. He wants to be able to call any play for that entire sheet, the entire game, make you be honest on defense and not allow the defenses to play one-dimensional with the 49ers from behind. And a lot of teams play better that way. The 49ers are just built to win that way. And get an early lead on the 49ers. That's how you beat them. Get a lead on them, make them one-dimensional, make the windows even smaller for Brock Purdy in the throwing game. And I think that's the way you beat the 49ers. And then you take the run game out of it so you can play too deep and you can play a style that allows you to be in charge of how the game is played rather than the 49ers dictating it. Because when Kyle Shanahan can dictate the game plan, it's usually going to be a long day for the opposing team.
Yeah, I've always wanted to see Purdy have to be down 10 points with 5 minutes to go in the third, fourth quarter and say, okay, you're gonna have to go light it up right now. And I'm not saying he can't do it, but I'd like to see him do it. I'd like to see him try to be forced into that situation. And it may not matter at all because Baltimore may just go stomp everybody.
Right, exactly. And very few teams can put the 49ers in that position too, which is huge. And I don't know if any of those teams exist on the NFC side either. So the 49ers stay healthy, get some rest. For the Rams, stay healthy. They'll be back at it next week somewhere against somebody, and it should be a whole lot of fun. Travis, always a pleasure chatting with you. And who knows, part 3, maybe.
Never know.
You never know. That'll be in Santa Clara if it happens. Thanks to all the listeners out there. Thanks for making us your first listen. Make sure you check out the Locked On Sports today. Locked On launched the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. So check it out. Subscribe to Locked On Sports today for all the local experts, national shows for every league coming to smart TVs near you as well. For Travis Rogers, Locked On Rams, Locked On 49ers, we will talk to you next time and talk to you post-game right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.